Little Ham says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to a very special E-Tims podcast tonight. My name is Desi, and I'm very glad to say I've got apologies to make in a second. I am very glad to say that tonight we are joined by George Paterson, the author of The Girl, the Crow, the Writer and the Fighter. Hi George, welcome to E-Tims podcast.
Thank you very much, Desi. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I have to apologise because this podcast should have happened a long time ago, and I can only put it down to certain events which we won't go into. But we're here now, so let's think positive. Or maybe we won't go back in the past because I've still got a grudge, which nothing to do with you, but I'll highlight it to you. You understand when we get there, right?
No worries.
So let's go back. So you've written this brilliant novel. I really enjoyed reading it. It was fantastic, and we'll come to that in a second. But I want to go back because there's another wee link we've no mentioned in our pre-chat there. Go back to the very beginning. I saw a recent tweet from you which said you were in Watson's in Silverburn, and it was the site of your old school.
Yes.
And that was the site of my mother. My mother also went to that school because my mother was a Pollok girl. So, and you're a boy from Pollok, so I just want to kind of go over your kind of background, where it all began for George Paterson.
Well, I was actually born in Paisley.
Well, we'll just finish the podcast.
I'm the only one in my family that was born in Paisley. We were living in Wallace Street at the time in Tradeston, and they decided not to take my mum to the Southern General. They took her to Paisley when she was, just about to give birth.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One of my family was born in Paisley. I've never even stayed a night in Paisley, apart from being in hospital for my birth.
Oh, that's like one of the kind of Brexit dual citizenship things you have now. You're like a new Rishi Sunak.
I use it. I'm a non-dom.
Exactly. If you go to Greyhead, you get special parking privileges. Is that how it works?
I might try that actually. That's not a bad idea.
Exactly. I think they
to Govan, and then for Lyndhurst up to Priest Hill, Pollok, and I stayed there for until I left home and went out to try and find fame and fortune with my band. But Pollok's where I'm from, really.
Yeah, we'll come in. So whereabouts in Govan? Because I left Govan. I was a Southern General boy. I left Govan when I was 5. I went to St Constantine's for the primary 1. And then, so I was Greenfield Street, but they built that down. Whereabouts in Govan were you? Do you remember?
Lyndhurst. It was Skipness Drive, just beside Elder Park.
I actually have you don't know if it's a fake memory, but I've got a memory of climbing a tree in Elder Park a long time ago.
Very distinct memories of sitting there waiting for my dad and my uncles to come out the yards and to play with me and my brother in the park, once they finished up. I've got very, very strong memories of the time there.
Yeah, my mum, she was a Houselwood in Pollok. They stayed in Houselwood in Pollok.
That's actually close to where my mum still lives now. She lives Lunderson Drive, which is round the corner for Houselwood. It's next
but for that school, what a strange world. A very small world, but again, Glasgow South Side is a very small world, so.
Everybody, as soon as you say your face so and so, you get 20 people jumping on going, where's the school? I know it. That school.
Yeah, so Pollok then, right? And again, I noticed you tweeted the other day about one of your teachers. I think must have been a good influence on you. So creative arts in Pollok, was it a big bedding place? Was it a good kind of ground for kind of pushing folk into the creative arts?
No, really, no. No, at that time it was very much get you ready, get you get you through your exams and get you out, basically. A lot of the teachers were really nice, and a lot of the teachers were evil fucking psychopaths. I don't know if I can swear on this.
You can swear all you want, mate, don't worry. We've got an explicit warning we can add to the podcast if we need.
That's fair enough. Some of them were lovely, and some of them were sociopath, psychopath types who just wanted to take their frustrations out on you. But occasionally you would meet someone who just understood that you were just some kid from the schemes trying to work out what he's doing. And one of those guys was my 5th year English teacher, Mr. Hagen. And I'd failed English in 4th year because I spent most of my 4th year study time reading the NME, playing guitar and playing pool with my pals. So I never put any effort into it. And I could hardly be surprised when I failed my exams. So 5th year, it was like, right, get your act together and really dig in here. And we changed English teacher from a teacher I liked personally, Mrs. Scott, to a teacher that nobody liked, Mr. Hagen, because he was quite firm and quite strict. But it really worked for me. He just tapped into something. He spotted something in me, and he went. It gave me a level of discipline with my schoolwork that I'd never really had up to that point. And he gave us a couple of books to read. And the first book he gave me, if I remember correctly, was The Loved One by Evelyn Waugh. And it was around about a time where Brideshead Revisited was. And I was like, Evelyn Waugh, I've got nothing in common with this guy at all. Brideshead Revisited was like, it could have been another planet, to Pollok still at the time. But he let me read this book called The Loved One, and I got it instantly. It was funny, it was irreverent, it was quite short as well, and it was set in the States. It wasn't a English, Baker Manners or anything. It wasn't that at all. It was unlike anything I'd ever read at that point, and it just switched. The switch in my head went on, and he was a great teacher for me. I didn't get him in 6th year, but I got him in 5th year, and I strolled my English O level, absolutely passed it, flying colours, 2nd attempt, and it was due to him, and he definitely unlocked, a couple of compartments in my mind.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good. It's really good when you hear these kind of stories into it, as in that is the amazing influence teachers have on pupils. But also, like, it's amazing how you always remember the books for school, not like the ones that really make a mark. I mean, like... That was one that was like... I used to read loads of encyclopedias when I was a kid. I just crammed my head full of facts. You used to hear for Pollok.
Honestly, my granddad, one of the things, my granddad's an old Irishman, Francie O'Connor, and he bought a bunch of encyclopedias in the early 70s before he died, and he left them to my mum, so my mum took them downstairs, and these books were like 12 bound.
The volumes.
Red volumes, and it was just like, that was the world for me. I would sit there, I was quite a solitary kid, and I'd rather sit at home poring over details about, a capital of Indonesia and, the produce of Aruba. I just poured out of that into my wee brain. And
the worst thing I think about things like encyclopedias is the word quiz, where all this information would come in handy, is towards the end, so it takes you a long time to realise how handy this information could be in later life.
Well, I don't know if you remember, there was in pubs back in the 80s, there was these machines called Give Us a Break, and it was based on... My guitar player for the band, we'll talk about that later on, but my guitar player, Gordon's a really smart fella, he still is. But he knows everything about maths and sciences and stuff, and I know tons of general knowledge and entertainment stuff. So between the two of us, we used to go on a Monday morning, we'd be skint because we spent all money at the weekend, no gigs on a Monday night, so it's like, right, okay, Monday we're heading to all the pubs, and we'd do the rounds of the pubs at these Give Us a Break machines, and we'd wait see somebody puts a pound in, and you could hear by the way that the pound dropped, whether it's a full machine, and we'd be like, right, we're taking this, and we'd put maybe £2 or £3 in and clean it out for 20. So
Nice.
2 or 3 every Monday, and that kept us in beer for a couple of days. It was great.
Yeah, no, I mind that one of our pals, he used to work for the actual company who delivered the machines. So he used to go out on a Friday night, we'd all be going out with like thinking you'll get your wage packet, and he just basically had two big pockets full of tokens. No, he just knew his token, and thinking he would just pump the machine full of tokens, take any cash you could get out, go up to the bar, can exchange these for notes, there you are, come back in the Monday morning, part of his work and collect the machine, you know what I mean? And basically just say, no, that was fine, that was empty, or that was such and such. Oh, he had a great life, you know what I mean? A nice wee perk. Yeah, right, so you touched on the band there, so I've got to hear, right, so your lead singer in the band, White, and again, I looked up a day and I was really interested in that kind of time you were at, the same time of like Deacon Blue, Wet, Who and Cry, all the bands breaking through. So again, what was that like? I know, apologies, we're not getting on to the book yet, but again, it's just amazing, because, so what age are you now? 56?
55.
55, alright, so I'm 53, so I've just maybe kind of missed you. I was probably just coming into the Corona bar as you've emptied the machine in Shawlands, that kind of, no.
And if you were on the south side, it was the Mulberry. Do you
I don't know. I remember the Mulberry very well. I was in the Mulberry, I'll tell you in Berlin. I was in the Mulberry night at the Heysel Stadium disaster. Right. I remember that well because that was our school valedictory dance. John Bosco and the Gorbals. We had a school valedictory dance and reflections in the Shawlands Hotel. Remember the Shawlands Hotel? We used to sit in the middle of the arcade. And that was it. We went in there for a pint. I used to, my big pal Kev was a lot taller and he looked a lot older. So he looked about 18, he looked 16. He went to the bar and ran, but I remember that was the night the Heysel Stadium disaster. Yeah, we used to be out in the Mulberry a long time ago. That used to be good. Shrubs in the back, the lounge.
We cleaned it regularly. We cleaned that one out regularly. That was because I lived round the corner at the time. I was living in, 86, I was living on Camp Hill Avenue.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Hill Avenue. I was living
well.
That was a local for me then.
Yeah, I saw in the band in Glasgow. So you're in Glasgow, and then I was looking at your bio. You end up doing London, hoping to make it.
Aye, we were doing quite well up here. We had quite a following, and we were on a compilation album with Wet and Deep and the Bluebells and all those guys, and it got to number 7 in the charts. And it was it sold more copies in that 1 week than Madonna's True Blue. That was a big claim to fame.
Oh, no.
We throwaway track. It was not one of our best tracks, but it was on the album, and it's still, it's still there. But we just felt that a few of our contemporaries, they were all starting to do really well, and we were doing well, but just no getting the deals and getting the breaks that we thought we deserved. So our manager, in his infinite wisdom, said, you know what, let's go down to London. We've got all these contacts in London. Let's go down there and we'll try and make it in the big pond rather than up here. So we left probably at the worst possible time. We were still filling every place we were playing in Glasgow, and we left to go down there. And initially it was a bit of a disaster because the house that we were promised, this big townhouse that we were promised in London, was actually a junkie's squat.
This is sounding like Creation Records.
Oh, no.
when you watch that movie, Creation Records, that's what they're living in.
Yeah, it's I've seen how it worked for them, but our reality was pretty brutal. We went down there and it was January or February or something like that, and there was no electricity, no heating. It was freezing. We were basically sleeping together, 4 days all huddled up together in sleeping bags, like trying to keep warm. We went and got jobs, and in Glasgow at the time, you were able to, you could be on the dole and do your craft, and learn. A lot of these bands did that. They wrote and recorded their first albums while they were on the dole. Down south, you couldn't do that. You needed to earn a living, so we all had to get jobs. And up here, it was easier to get gigs. Down south, you were charged for everything you did. You played a gig, for instance, you might bring 50 people, but you'd only get 50 pence on the ticket for those 50 people.
Yeah.
So you get £25, and out of that £25, £20 is your cut of the PA. So you've got to pay £20 to the PA. So at the end of your gig, and you've got 50 people, you've brought 50 people there. You're only getting a fiver to split between four of you, and you're like, this is not working. So it sort of fell away after a year or two, and we just get a bit mad with it on the drink and the drugs, and sort of lost it a little bit.
Yeah, and right, so and we'll no linger in on this too much, but you turned to living in creating Europop, according to the bio.
That's true, actually. I went over to Switzerland. I got married and had a couple of kids. I went over to Switzerland and lived. And I was writing and recording in an English guy's recording studio in the next little town to where I was staying, just outside of Zurich. And loads of quite well-known singers at the time were demoing the songs that we were doing. So nothing ever went to, chart levels or anything like that, but it was quite exciting, even though the music wasn't exactly my cup of tea.
So were you making a living as a musician then, or were you still supplementing it with an actual career?
With anything that was going, I was working on building sites and working in hotels and working in a carpet factory, and you name it, I'd do any job just to keep me in guitar strings and booze and whatever at the time, just to keep me ticking over.
So the working title for the next book, the autobiography, is that going to be From Pollok to Zurich to Shawlands? It quite possibly that could be a working title, right? So sorry, on you go, George.
I've written a sort of one of the first things I did write was a screenplay based on more of a serious kind of thing, based on our hapless adventures as our band. So that is, you can still get a couple of the episodes, a couple of the pieces from that are still available online if you want.
Yeah, this is the greatest band you've never heard. Everybody wants to go. Yeah, I was enjoying it, and I especially smiled today with the Shawlands Redemption.
Yeah.
But I'd like to make a complaint because chapter 13 is not online. We go to chapter 12 to chapter 14. So if anybody wants a really good, I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed you getting scudded with a can of Stella in the park because you want to.
It's 84% true.
But that is available. If anyone's wanting to read that, that is available at intocreative.co.uk/greatest-band-you-never-heard. I'd recommend it. It's a really good list. So we've got George Paterson, a vocalist, musician, then a writer, or was the writer always there? Was that always just part of the whole kind of lyrics side? Were you a big lyricist?
Yeah, I wrote the lyrics and I wrote a lot of the music for the band, but the lyrics that I wrote, once I started to get beyond the I love you, you love me kind of stage, and started writing little stories and little vignettes about I'd started experimenting with stories in 3, 4, 5 minute form with songs, and I really started to enjoy that, and those bits get longer, and the bits I was writing for the band's websites, the biogs and the blogs and stuff like that. My guitarist Gordon, I've been playing music with him for nearly 40 years now, but he always really enjoyed them, so pretty much I was writing for myself and for him, just if it made him laugh, then I knew I was on the right track. So I just kept doing it, and it got bigger and bigger, and I expanded into the story of the band, because every time we met, me, Gordon and Billy, the other member of the band, we'd always go back and talk about, did we really do all this stuff? Did all this stuff really happen? And then he would go, do you remember this and do you remember that? And one of us said, somebody should write this stuff down, because it's really entertaining. We're making ourselves laugh about this. You should write it down and maybe share it. And that was like light bulb moment in the head. So from then on in, it started getting bigger and bigger and became a bigger part of what I was doing.
A quick personal tangent, right? But you mentioned Billy, I think there, in one, I read one of your pieces that said he became a hi-fi mogul. Did he have the shops in the town? Because I thought it was maybe Bill Hutchinson's, I couldn't remember the name.
Bill Donaldson, his name is.
Was that his? Was that his?
Down south, he did it down south.
Oh, that's fine, no.
Down south, so he had his own company down on Baker Street, actually. He did really well there for a couple of years, and he's still doing it. He's still down south.
I was going to say, because I can still show you my original Canon cylindrical speakers that I got in that hi-fi shop way back in 1992, that was. I've still got them here.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, they'll come back. Cylindrical speakers will come back.
They'll come back.
Yeah, fingers crossed. As my friend, I've got them and I've got stands, and as my friend once called them, big black dildo speakers. So so that's why they're kept in the small room now. Right, so at which point now, you've written you've written the screenplay, you've written a few other bits and pieces, or you've written other pieces, no bits, not to belittle them, but at which point do you think, I've got a full 400-page book in me? How did that all start to come together, or did it come together in pieces, or was it just a commitment for yourself?
Well, it was around about the time I decided to leave London. I was offered. I worked for London Underground for years. I used to run underground stations.
Hold on, I worked in London for 8 years, and I used to live in Vauxhall, and the Oval Underground was famous for having the notice board, which was always written out, and it used to always have. That wasn't you by any chance, was it?
Yeah, I was up at Camden Town. I was up Camden for ran Camden for about 15 years. I was on the Underground for nearly 20 years, and then they offered redundancy, and my wife and I had a chat. The two youngest kids, the two eldest ones are off out doing their own thing. And the two youngest ones, well, one wasn't born at that point. It was just a case of, I can't see myself growing old in London. Mm-hmm. Let's just take the chance and make the change now. So I took redundancy and came back to Scotland, took early retirement from the Underground, and just at the time when my youngest daughter was born. So basically I said I'll stay home and I'll be the stay-at-home parent for her. My wife will continue working. We'll come up here and see if we can have a better quality of life. And I'd started just experiment with longer pieces like reviews and articles about Glasgow and about bands that I liked and stuff. And I was getting getting good traction from it. So I read an article by Stuart Cosgrove about the boxer Sonny Liston. Mm-hmm. Liston's trip to Scotland in 1963 when he was heavyweight champion. And it was like an incredible article. It really blew me away. And it triggered something for me. It made me think, well, I'll try and write something fictional about this trip that he had in the early 60s and the reaction he got. And it was perhaps show a different side to this fellow about whom very little is known. He's not for holding the biggest prize in sport. Doesn't seem to be a great deal known about Sonny Liston. So I wanted to expand on that. At the same kind of time, I was writing another article about the controversial author Henry Miller, and it was based on some letters that he'd written in his dotage to an American showgirl in the 1970s. And I started writing a piece about Miller, but it wasn't really going anywhere. The Liston piece wasn't really working for me until I read another article about unusual friendships. And I read about the unusual friendship a true friendship between Samuel Beckett, the playwright, and Andre the Giant, the wrestler. Yep. He had a genuine friendship when Andre was a kid. Beckett used to drive him to school in this village in France, and they bonded over a love of cricket. And I thought, hang on, that's a really odd concept. Beckett and Andre the Giant, and it just like something clicked and went, what if I put Miller enlisting together and had some sort of fictional construct where they met and they had this incredible fucking odd adventure together. And that's when it really started. And I probably wrote about 50 very, very basic pages before I really got my teeth into it. I went back and re-edited and started again. And probably when my daughter started going to nursery, I really got my teeth into it, and it flew off the page after that. But all in it took about four and a bit years, start to finish.
And that, like, I'm just looking at my wee notes here. You kind of be like up there, like I've got the idea for the book, and then Henry Miller, someone who always intrigued you. Again, I looked up. It's interesting you mentioned like the showgirl letters and stuff. Quite a very interesting character indeed when you read that man's lifestyle. But again, but then when I started seeing like, yeah, he was in Greece, know that right? He was in Paris, and I'm like, tick the box, tick the box, tick the box, tick. And then Sonny Liston, he's like the hero figure of the book. He comes off as the romantic hero. Again, correct me if you think I'm wrong here. But did you think he kind of got a bad press? The whole kind of, he was in the mob's pocket for the Ali fights kind of idea. I think he's had a bad press over the years, or kind of bad reputation over the years.
I think that is the case. And Cosgrove's article really shone some light on what his personality could have been, because the reaction he got in Scotland was very different from the reaction that he got when he was in the States. In the States, he was seen as the black boogeyman. He was thought as this malevolent, violent spirit person that white America just was fearful of. They could accept the previous world champion Floyd Patterson, and to an extent they could accept Muhammad Ali because he was witty and fast on his feet and fast with his words, whereas Liston was truculent, unapologetic, brutal, and Cosgrove shone a little light on his personality, a bit of his personality that wasn't normally talked about. When he came to Scotland, he felt love from the people of Scotland and warmth. There's pictures of him walking about with kilts on and stuff, and he's this huge, beautiful smile on his face, and you never ever see Liston smile, except on a very few occasions. But the pictures of him in Scotland and the reports of him in his time in Scotland gave him, I feel, a little insight into what it would be like to be loved and cared for. And I wanted to tap into a bit of that side of his personality.
Right. So you mentioned there about like dropping your daughter off at nursery and that. So at what speed were you rapidly taking her to nursery by the time you were starting to get into it? Like the whole writing process, was it a case of fitting it in, or were you starting to make life fit around writing the book kind of thing? Did it?
Part of it, I was like, when she slept, I wrote. So basically, she's going to bed at night or going to bed for a wee nap in the afternoon, I wrote. And then when she went to nursery, I get more time to myself during the day, so I had time to sit and just, batter away at the keyboard for 4 or 5 hours until I had to go and pick her up. So when she went to nursery, that's when it really started taking off, and I was able to get, 1,000 words a day kind of thing after that. But it was, and now I took a wee job not long ago there just to keep me ticking over, and I'm back to the same kind of place again where I'm having to find time to fit the writing in. So when everyone goes to bed at night, I'll stay up to 1, half 1, 2 in the morning to do it then, or I'll make time at the weekends, or I'll find wee pockets of time to do what I need to do. So
yeah, see, that's the Pollok in you, because my mother, she was a pure night owl also, you know what I mean? So that's the Pollok.
I would be up 2, 3 in the morning every night if I didn't have to get up at 7 in the morning with the kids and get them, with my wife and get them ready to school.
My mum was once a witness at a trial for a taxi driver getting physically assaulted. and she was in the she witnessed it, and she was put in the witness box, and the prosecutor or whoever it was, the lawyer asking her questions says, and Mrs. Seeley, what were you doing when you happened to see the taxi driver being struck by the assailant or by the defendant? And she went, I was hanging my washing out. And they said, it happened at 4:30 in the morning. And my mother went, yeah. Yeah, I don't see your point.
No, I think the shift work over the last 20 years, it just sort of pushed me towards, I was always, in the band, I was always up late. I was always up, stay up to 3, 4, 5 in the morning, then go to sleep and get up in the afternoon. The shift work with the underground sort of curtailed a lot of that, and I had to sort of time my sleep. So I had to get the right amount of sleep, the right time. And then since I've been semi-retired, it's been more, I'm going to bed roughly the same time every night, and I'm trying to push it as late as I possibly can. Some nights I'm going to sleep at 2 and I'm up at 7. So I'll get maybe 5, 6 hours sleep tops a night, but it's worth it. I'll find time to sleep when I need to.
Yeah. So for the listeners, in your words, how would you sum up the plot? Because you've got a couple of hours if you like to sum it up. But how would you like it? Is it a road movie coming of age, coming of, you know what I mean? And like, how would we sum it up, do you think? 100 words.
An old-fashioned ripping yarn set in Maine, and set in Paris, set in Greece, set in London, set in New York, between a number of different protagonists and antagonists. It's got something for everyone. It's got a bit of sex.
It's got a great baddie, isn't it? It's got a great baddie. Well done. You wrote a great baddie.
No spoilers, right?
No, I'm not saying a word. I've written here, it's a rip-roaring adventure, but I'll come to that question. That's a little bit later on. So where are we? So yeah, writing process, that's fine. Right, so hopefully everyone's listening and looks forward to reading it, and if you've read it already, I'm sure you've enjoyed it. But the classic, write what you know, right? So what does a small town boy from Pollok, so to speak, know about small town America and decadence Paris? Like, again, did you have to do a lot of research there? Is a lot of it made up? Am I just naive to think you just sat there and went, this is what it was like? You know what I mean? I've watched a few BBC Two movies on a Saturday afternoon. You know what I mean? That kind of, what kind of research did you need to do there?
Well, I've spent a bit of time in New York. I've spent a bit of time in Paris. And I know, I'm a city boy. I like my cities. Drop me in the middle of a city and I'm happy. I'll find my way around. So I know my way around New York quite well. I know my way around Paris quite well. And obviously London's mentioned there as well. But the other places like Auburn, Maine. I've never been to Auburn, Maine in my life. I've never been to St. Louis. I've never been to Crete. A lot of that is to do with just research. A lot of the books that I'm reading that mention those places, the fight that Sonny Liston, the second fight Liston had against Muhammad Ali, was scheduled for elsewhere, but they moved it to Lewiston, Maine, which is the neighbouring town to Auburn, Maine. So I wanted to start the story or have the heart of the story in this place, because then I'm going to return to it later on, or return to the themes later on. And it also, Maine, just up the road from where the movie or the book is set, is where Stephen King's from. He's from Maine itself. Mm-hmm. I was hoping, to get a wee bit of a celebrity endorsement there, but a lot of this stuff is a figment of imagination, and Google Maps has been really helpful as well, because if I want to go and see where something is, if I want to go and picture something, I'll look online and I'll do the wee time, pick the wee man up, drop him in Google Maps and walk around. Paris, London and New York, I know my way around those places, but Maine, Crete, St. Louis, no idea, making it up.
No, that's honestly, you couldn't have replied to that perfectly, because I wrote here research. It's like the whole book is so evocative, especially the Parisian. I didn't want to ask when you're talking about, you know, Paris quite well, and it's not a spoiler. I didn't want to ask, do you know what a Paris jail cell looks like, or a Paris police cell looks like? I don't know how to get away there. We'll move on. But yeah, the whole Paris thing. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it was originally a French production, but it was on Sky Arts, kind of dubbed The Adventures of Modern Art, and it's all about the Picasso, the run about between the war periods. And it
was really quite entertaining. I was like, I'm going to watch more of this.
It's free. You can watch it online, because I had to remind myself of the name of it. But just the whole feel of that is like the whole Henry Mulligan about that Paris at that time. That's what it totally reminded me. No, that I'm basically searching for your next absinthe, sorry. Yeah. I mean, wherever I lay my hat, that's my next drink, that kind of idea.
That kind of thing was probably how I lived myself for years, you know. I had that kind of existence where it was, I basically only thought about the next bed I had to sleep in, or the, you know, drink I was getting, and, you know, my next adventure. For years, that was my life, especially as a, you know, itinerant musician. That's how you think of things. It's like, I'm just only thinking of, you know, the end of this room. So that kind of thing, the just post La Belle Epoque era Paris has always held a real fascination with me. You know, when you get so many of the world's greatest writers and artists and photographers all congregating in one place, it tends to make it quite special. I find that with New York as well.
Yeah, right. Like I've been to, like, when you go to, like, say, even about the whole kind of Moulin Rouge area, the whole kind of that, you know, you still get that feel, even though it may be just a tourist trap or whatever nowadays. Sacré-Cœur still get that feeling.
A couple of doors up for the Moulin Rouge, you've got the Harp Bar and the Place de Clichy,
Yep.
the big bar. So anytime I'm in Paris and there's a match on, I'm in the Harp watching the game.
Good. So again, and you mentioned Steve, because I wrote here May, who's like the main kind of female lead. It's her story. I've got May, Stephen King's small town feel. It really immerses people. And again, like the librarian character, she's like kind of the epitome of that wee kind of small town America feeling about it. And then you've got the diner. I mean, you've got you're ticking so many boxes that it just brings you right into it. It's really, really good.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
No, that's right. So again, right, so we've maybe touched on this already, right? So I've got here, like, your influences. So I've got, like, your first memory of a great reading experience. We've talked about the Love One earlier. So that was good. But what about, like, what's your favourite book? And what did you feel? Here's a question I hadn't really thought of before. Was there anything that you had to avoid that kind of came across your mind and you thought, oh, that would be good, and then you thought, no, I can't touch that. That's either been done by somebody else or it's too similar, even word quite. No, that way you kind of had to be your own critic.
I didn't really feel that. I just felt, where am I going to take this naturally? Where's it going to go? And I roughly knew, obviously.
To be fair, that kind of reflects Henry's journey. I'm not saying any more, but, well.
I found that when you read early Henry Miller books, or his early stuff, it's full of passion. He only really became Henry Miller as a sort of character in his 40s, because he'd lived this rather unsatisfying life. He was married a couple of times, and when he went to Paris in the mid-30s, he was already in his early 40s. So he'd lived a life, a not very satisfactory one as far as he was concerned, and not a creative one. But when he went to Paris, the whole world opened up for him, and you can see that in his writing. And it's very vibrant and very alive, and, you know, it's at the time it was considered pornographic, and that's what made him quite a controversial author. But the stuff he wrote later on to the showgirl, the letters to Brenda Venus, who's still alive actually, they show a man in his mid-80s who has regrets and is still, there's little shoots of life there, but he's very reflective and a little bit regretful as well. Certain ways, the ways he treated some of his family and other friends. It was a couple of very, very poignant letters in that book, and that was pretty much the kernel of truth for Henry Miller that I took for my book. When it comes to influences, I wouldn't even say he's a huge influence on my writing or my reading. He's not I really like him and I respect him as a writer and as a creative. But I've got a whole bunch of different creative influences from that period that possibly would top Miller. People like Dashiell Hammett and James Thurber in particular. Thurber's probably the one, that was the first book that I read before The Loved One that made me go, oh Jesus, yeah, this actually speaks to me. Very, very humorous, very satirical, and very sharp dialogue. Loved it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, how does it feel when you feel you've written that last word and put that final full stop in, and you go to end? Forget about the editor and that coming along, but at that point where you think, I've told my story here, how did that feel? Did you have to go and take it away in the nursery, or go and pick the way up the nursery, or did you just sit?
Just had to leave it for a I can't remember. I let my wife. My wife's, she does a lot of proofreading anyway as part of her job, so I gave her she'd read it. She's read it twice before it actually went to print, and I gave it to a couple of other people in very rough form, people with literary backgrounds, and let them have a read of it. And but I was quite happy with myself with what I'd done. If I was going to be editing, I don't think you're ever happy with it, to be honest with you. You're content that you've reached the pinnacle. You've actually finished. You've written a story. But you even now, if I look at it, I tend not to look at it very often. I'll look at it now and go, oh, I changed that. You're always going to get that. You're always going to go back and go, oh, maybe I've done that a wee bit differently, or this a wee bit differently. But you have to just draw a line and say, look, it's not mine anymore. It's out there. And David Ross, the writer, said that. He said that to me before about, once you've finished with the book, it's out there and it's someone else's. It's not yours anymore. And I can't remember who he quoted. It was a quote about that, but it was really prescient. It really hit home with me, and it feels that way with me. It's not mine anymore. Although I have to go and talk about it, and I talk about it quite a lot, and I'm talking about it to people on a daily basis at the moment. It feels quite surreal and odd to be talking about something that is now out there and is a living entity in its own right.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear you talk about that whole, as in there's always something else you could improve, whatever. I don't know if you've saw it, there's a movie called The Outfit. It stars Mark Rylance. He basically plays, I don't want to say a tailor because he's not a tailor. He keeps telling you during the show he's basically a bespoke outfitter. He calls himself a cutter. He's Savile Row in Chicago, in Gangland, Chicago. So I think you'd probably like it. There's a nice wee cut of overtones, but there's a monologue where he talks about creating the suit, the perfect suit, and he says the ultimate revelation, the ultimate resignation is perfection does not exist. So as soon as you accept that, you move on to the next one, because you've got to try and attain perfection there, knowing in your heart of hearts you'll never get there. But it's that kind of journey thing. It's really interesting.
Good point. That's a really good way of looking at it. It's something that I feel I'm taking to this present work, the one that I'm working on at the moment, and I think I'm a better writer now than I was when I started The Girl, the Crow. I'm definitely a better, sharper writer. But because of that, it's taken me longer to write, because the free form, flowing prose, purple prose at times, of my debut novel has been replaced by, I think I've got an idea what I'm doing now. So I'm not going to just let it flow. It's going to be a bit by bit by bit. It's like someone, I can't remember who else said this one, maybe someone Chekhov, I don't fucking know.
Go on, name drop.
Well, honestly, I don't know. I might be Chekhov. It was about constructing the perfect sentence. It was all you do as a writer is just you're constructing that one perfect sentence. And that's what writing is. You're just constructing a perfect sentence. And when you finish that sentence, then you do the next sentence. Construct another one, and that's how you go on. I can't remember if it's Chekhov. I couldn't tell you. Something in my mind says it was. It might not be.
That can be a competition for the listeners. So what came first, the book or the publishing deal, so to speak? How did you get into getting this? How did it becoming what it is, becoming published and released, etc., and hardback, paperback? How does that all work?
Well, one of my friends, I used to go for walks, and still do actually, around the West End with a friend of mine, Stephen Cameron, and he's got a website, the Into Creative website, and he's the supremo of the whole Intus media thing. And we go around and we chat about music and football and life and stuff. And on our travels, he would keep asking me, how's your book going? How's your story going? At the time, I had no idea how to get published, or if I'd have to self-publish or self-edit, or no idea, no concept of getting it done at this point. And he published a few books under Into, but very, very selective about the fiction that he wanted to publish, and made no bones about that way back. So I never pushed him on it. I never spoke to him much about it, but he would ask about the idea and the concept. And I remember meeting him. It was the day that Joe Biden was confirmed as president, and it was a Saturday afternoon. I met him and his partner Jan in Byres Road. Just bumped into them by chance. We went for a wee coffee, and Stephen was asking me about the book, and Jan started saying, "Oh, so tell me about the book." So I started telling her what it was about. She was saying, "Oh, wow, that sounds incredible. I'd love to read this." Because I hadn't finished it at this point. She went, "I'd love to read it when you're finished with it." So, yeah, sure, no worries. So by the time I'd finished it, I kept talking with Stephen and, saying, if you know anybody who do you think I'd be able to, contact and, put it towards. And he said, well, gave me a couple of names, and he goes, well, I'll have a wee read it, he goes, but I'm a very slow reader. I'm not really that in a big rush to publish fiction again at the moment. So I can't promise anything. And he was a bit concerned that it may be one of these things your friend gives you a book.
Yeah.
You feel pressured into, I need to say it like this. And he went, don't be expecting anything. I was like, that's fair enough. I'm not expecting anything. I was just like, have a wee read it, let Jan have a read it if you want as well, and see what happens. And I expected not to hear from him again about this for weeks. A couple of hours later, he sends me a picture, page 73. Bottom of the manuscript, it's page 73 with the message, "We need to talk." So, okay. Just gave him a call. He's like, "Come down, we need to have a chat." So we went out, and he was like, "This is incredible. If this keeps going the way I think it's going to go, and the way it started, I'll publish it. I'm publishing it." And we more or less shook on it there and then. So I've been very, very fortunate.
Well, again, there's a lot of people who say you make your own luck. Maybe it's just that West End luck. You'll become one of those West End hipsters rather than the Pollok boy. A Pollok boy made good. No, I mean, from the Bundy to Byres Road, there's your autobiography right there.
I'll never know about a Pollok boy. I'll always be George for Priest Hill. I'm always going to be that. But it wouldn't have happened had I not had I still been in London, this wouldn't have happened. Had I still been working for the Underground, I wouldn't have had time to write this. And I wouldn't have known the people up here. So down south, you can't get a break. It's very, very hard to get a break unless you know someone who's in somewhere. Whereas up here, if you are around the West End and you're dealing with people like Stephen and the other people that we know, it's a very creative and a very nurturing environment. So if you're around a lot of these people, they are very supportive. You know, they'll naturally go out their way to, you know, I like your stuff, I'm going to pass it on to so-and-so. Then that guy will pass it on to this guy. And all of a sudden, there's a wee bit of a buzz going about. That wouldn't have happened had I not returned to Scotland.
If you don't mind me asking, you've got your drum kit behind you. In Camden, did you ever go to the drum studio next to the Holly Arms? I used to go to percussion lessons in there.
Oh, I used to go to Holly Arms. Holly Arms is
next door, it was like the railway arches. That was converted into a full kind of music studios. I used to go into percussion. And that was basically all the field musicians were in there getting lessons. Now that idea.
Well, I used to work in TVAM, the TV studio, just there for the round the corner for the Holly Arms. I used to work in there as a porter back in the day. So I know the area very well. Mm-hmm. I don't know the drum studios.
This the railway arches were converted. You walk straight past it, and then it was literally on your right hand side. Right. So what have I got here? Was the title always the same? Did you have it? When did the title come to you, or was that suggested by somebody else?
Oh, I came up with the title myself. It was I had quite a generic title for it, but it just sounded like every other book that I see on the shelves, and it was a working title, and then close to the end, I'm like, I want a title that's going to really stand out, a title that you're going to forget what it's called, so that I have to repeat it.
Yeah. Yes. So I can keep calling it the cook, the thief, his wife, and his lover.
The canoe. There's so many of those kind of things, but I deliberately wanted. It's the four, main elements of the story. But I wanted it to be something that was a bit of a tongue twister, a bit of it sounds clumsy, so I want you to be able to say it again and again and again until you get it.
Yeah, but even I'm looking at it here, and it's just, it's a lovely looking book too. The crow, the girl with the crow, the writer, the fighter, that's got the crow on top of the boxing gloves and the back. But it's just the wee, what do you call it, the chopped out death figure at the bottom, the wee man at the bottom. That's a lovely touch, isn't it, from a design perspective?
He came up with a couple of wee drafts of wee prototypes for the cover, because he is a graphic designer by trade, and he had a couple of ideas and we were going back and forth and stuff, and when he got to those bits he was like, what do you think of this? And I'd be like, oh yeah, great. Yeah, let's do that. So it was a real good process. It's a beautiful looking book as well. It's like a fantastic job producing this and publishing it. It's I'm really proud to be associated with Stephen and the product,
Yep, it's very, very good, and the excellent kind of output for Into. As I say, Into Creative, if anyone's listening, please go to their website and look up their various areas there of interest. I've got a question here. Again, this is silly, right? But it did make me smile. This is a personal thing when I was reading it, and it's the bit when Henry goes out on a night when he shouldn't go out, let's say, right, and he uses the phrase "the downtown lights," and that immediately made me think of Blue Nile. Oh, yeah. And I was wondering if you had any other musical references that you'd maybe slipped in. Was there any or any other references you smiled at yourself that you kind of put in there intentionally, or was that this? As I say, it'll probably just be me being silly, but it made me smile thinking about Blue Nile.
I'm a huge Blue Nile fan. I'd have to think about that. Actually, you've.
It might be subliminal, as I say, but it just made me think of that.
One of those just went through. It's become part of my vernacular. That it just becomes, it just slips into the dialogue. But no, I'd have to think. That's a good question. I'll get back to you on that one.
That's fine, right. So, and I have to ask, in the fact that we're only Tim's here, were you not tempted to mention Celtic at any point somewhere?
Celtic is never far from my mind. If I could have shoehorned it in somewhere, I probably would have, but it would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I'm not saying make it a challenge in your next piece of work, but somewhere down the line, you can drop me a line and go, see if you can spot it, and whatever it's in.
There's the next book, the one I'm working on at the moment, is set in Glasgow. So that's a wee bit easier to do, but I already have mentioned Partick Thistle in this.
Yeah, see, that's you going full Byres Road on this. That's you. You're hung, drawn and quartered. You're a West End boy now.
Chilling out of Farnhill.
So again, like, we'll come on to the whole Lost in Music stuff. You do your presenter. Audiobook. Is it an audiobook for the Crow yet?
No, I would love it to happen, but it's no happened as yet. I don't know how.
Whose voice do you hear in your head?
Well,
your own. Do you fancy doing it yourself? I don't mean that vanity wise.
No, not at all. It's you need an actor to read these lines out.
David Tennant. He might be good. David Tennant.
If he's available,
I'm sure he seems like a kind of affable chap. I'm sure he's got a free weekend.
I'm sure he has. I'm sure he'll do it for 50 quid now.
Your pal Stuart Cosgrove, he could have he's got the low tones that could maybe carry some of it off.
He's got actually quite a nice voice for radio and podcasts and things like this. He could probably get away with it. But I would have. There was an actor that passed away a couple of weeks ago called Gilbert Gottfried.
Yep, I seen you did tweet about that. That would have been quite a read.
Half in jest. It was only partially in jest, but he had the same kind of New York, if you actually hear Henry Miller's own voice, that's what he sounded. Not as harsh as Gottfried, but that kind of really, Brooklyn accent. Miller never lost his accent. I don't know if Gilbert Gottfried was from Brooklyn, but in my mind it would have just. I'd love to have heard him saying some of those lines.
I'm trying to look up who plays Frank Gallagher. Remember Shameless?
Oh,
what's his name? What's his name? Because David Felfall, because he plays Samuel Beckett in the Sky Arts play about the Andre the Giant. So maybe we could have a word with him and tie it all together. Because there's a Sky Arts, they did say it's like Urban Myths or whatever it is, and it's a wee half an hour story. There's a great one where I think it's what's the wee guy that's in the Eddie Marzan playing Bob Dylan.
Oh, that one, that was
really good. It's the same series, but they did the Andre the Giant one, and thing where
that out.
Because Andre the Giant, his dad's building, he's might be building an extension, and it takes years for Samuel Beckett.
On Beckett's farm, and Beckett used to drive him to school.
That's right, yeah. Ends up. Right. So there you go. We'll pencil him in at the moment and see if anybody else pops up. So as I mentioned earlier, so I've got here, it's a rip-roaring adventure. It is an old, and I mentioned BBC Two, Saturday movies, that whole kind of, that kind of feeling about it. So again, but that's very much in at the moment. I mean, there's very much, that kind of whole kind of storyline style's in. Even like Uncharted, recent big movie, this came back out. But do you think there's any chance that anybody picking it up, like Netflix, etc.? Anybody kind of tapped at the door or made inquiries?
Not at the moment, but it's still very early days. It's only been published a couple of months, so I'd be delighted. I'd be made up. And one of the things that people say, probably the most common thing people say about the book is how cinematic it feels. It feels like you're either watching a movie or it's a series, and how easily they can picture this, on the screen. And that is a big compliment, because that's a big part of my creative process. I write with film in mind. I don't write with, literature as my guide. In my mind, I write as, this is how I see it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, but it's how I do it.
That's very interesting. Ian just thinking on it there, because there's a lot of backstory potential. Yeah. There's backstory like covered in the book, like Sonny Liston, etc. But there is, like, say, the Crow's backstory. You know what I mean? The librarian's backstory. Yeah. You know, that these sort of things. There's loads of backstory that could be touched or expanded upon, I'm sure.
And,
you could, even if you oversaw it rather than having to do all the work yourself, I'm sure. I mean that. So again, that could be the ideal six episode Netflix series. But again, I've written here, could Martin Compson, who's in everything anyway, could he pull off playing Henry? You know what I mean?
I'd love to have seen the guy who I first encountered Henry Miller after watching a movie called Henry and June, and it was an actor called Fred Ward. He played Henry Miller, but he's actually nothing like Henry Miller in real life. He's quite a muscular, he's a guy that would kick your ass. He plays like astronauts and cowboys and stuff. So he played Henry Miller as a quite muscular, almost, as I mentioned before, like the Indiana Jones of sex. That's how he played him, portrayed him. So that, to me, in my mind, that was my initial image of Henry Miller, was Fred Ward playing him. And then I got to know what he was like, and he was actually quite weedy and very, very different from Fred Ward. So if I was wanting somebody to play it, Fred Ward's probably the right age now to do it. He's probably the right age to play the older Henry Miller. So,
yeah. Well, again, like the person I pictured in my mind was Adrian Dunbar, be like Line of Duty, who stars along Martin Compson.
He's too tall and dingy and stuff.
You can do great things with perspective these days in the movies.
Miller was quite slim, and he looked like an accountant. He'd have to look like.
Right, let me look up and see if Nigel Havers is still alive. Let me just quickly
Pause it a second while I go to the loo.
Aye, on you go. That's fine. So at this point in the proceedings, folks, George has buggered off to do the toilet. I'll let you know we're nearly finished the book chat, and then we'll move on to George and his Celtic history and his current thoughts on and the rest of the goings on this season. Hopefully you're enjoying the chat of hearing how a boy from Pollok has written a fantastic novel, The Girl, the Crow, the Writer and the Fighter. I could not recommend it enough. It's a great, great read. It's got great commendations from Stuart Cosgrove. Rarely has a debut novelist so firmly rooted in his Scottish identity written a work which is so at ease with the details of raw emotions and breathtaking action in an international setting. That was Stuart Cosgrove's praise for the book there. It's very good, very good. And we also have praise in the back from Tom Gillespie, Alistair Braidwood and David F. Ross. Paterson's writing moves through the chapters like a champion middleweight, dipping and soaring in all the right places before jabbing you into submission when you least expect it. There's a great number of wee twists in the book. The characters are fantastic. I'd hardly recommend seeking it out, either purchasing it, that's available in hardback and paperback, or again, there's still libraries available, hopefully where you are, asking your library, Into Books publish it, The Girl, the Crow, the Writer and the Fighter, and we look as though we have George back. He's back from his pee break. It's okay, I was just reading the commendations from Mr. Cosgrove and Mr. Ross there. Again, speaking of course very highly of the book, and it's very well deserved. But we're almost finished. So again, it would be great to see, but again, this brings us back to talking about your hold on it, so to speak, is not so much about, like, you still own the rights, etc. but your book's no longer your story, so if you know what I mean. So again, it could become a film, it could become something else. I mean, who knows where this may go? Meaning there'll be that's another story in itself, which will be good to watch. Right, so I've got here. So what's next? So you're talking about you're writing another book about Glasgow. So have you any timelines for that? Are you putting any deadlines on yourself?
I'm hoping to write it by the end of the year. I'm hoping to have it finished by the end of the year, ready to be edited start of next year.
Any hints? Any hints what it's about?
Yeah, it's a sort of West End, culty, gothic satire / chiller. So it's got a wee bit of horror.
Yeah, you just don't like it. For a man who put a librarian in his book, you just don't like to be categorised easily, do you?
No. I'm happy to just
cut across the genres.
It's a wee idea I had while I was writing this one, and a lot of it's inspired by the walks that I take at night and the sort of, you know, gothic, neo-gothic and baronial kind of places that are around the West End when I go for these walks. And the sort of the cult of the West End is part of it as well. That a lot of people in the West End only think about the West End and they don't think of any other. They think Glasgow is the West End. And, you know, that even for people from different parts of the city, who live now there once they're in the West End are like, well, this is it, this is Glasgow for me. So I'm touching on a few different themes in the book, but it's primarily, you know, I would say think Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Wayne. Oh, wait, is that the working title?
Rosemary's Baby mixed with a bit of the Wicker Man and a bit of J.G. Ballard. It's got that kind of vibe and a wee bit of Muriel Sparks.
So an uplifting, happy-go-lucky coming-of-age story.
Yeah, it's going to be very different from the last book, and it's I don't think it's going to be as cheery or as
let's just say the way me bounces across the opening pages, that this won't kind of reflect that too often. Is that what you're saying?
Nothing like that in this one. This is going to be very different. If people are going to be buying this thinking it's going to be like a sort of continuation or a part two,
right. And are you just going to prepare yourself for the 4 million metaphors that people see in these characters and stories?
Whatever you get for it is up to you. You know, that's up to you. I've written it. I write these things and I put them out there, and it's entirely up to you how you want what you want to take from them.
Yeah,
totally.
So you mentioned also, but you're still actively involved with the Girl, the Crow, Writer and Fighter. So what have you got coming up regards that?
Yeah, well, the next thing on the calendar is on the I Write bill, the Glasgow Book Festival bill on the 7th of May. At the Mitchell Theatre with 2 other authors, Angela Jackson and Ross Sayers. And we're talking about our books that night. So if you want to come along and hear me give her more about this book that we find it very hard to pin down, and I'll still no have a proper answer for you then, please feel free to come along to the Mitchell that evening. Yeah,
and have you done that I Write before? Is this your first time?
This is the first. I've not done many of these things at all. This is all new to me. This, because of my debut novel and I've never been involved in anything like this before, everything is very fresh to me. It's a whole new experience.
Well, we'll see if they mention the Blue Nile reference, right? And if they don't, then you'll know they've missed something within the chapters. So you've got your new books coming up. I think that may be okay. Let me see. Yeah, right. So I've got here, just to remember, folks. You can, as well as reading George's great novel, you can also read his earlier output, The Greatest Band You've Never Heard, at intocreative.co.uk. But I also want to thank you, George, as well as writing the book, but also for being the Twitter Wednesday highlight, my current Twitter Wednesday highlight, and that is when you put your call out for songs. I don't know if it's sheer laziness or you're just that open-minded sort of guy. But you're calling out for song suggestions for your Lost in Music radio show.
Yep.
How long have you been doing that? How long has that been going for?
Well, I've been doing it, when I came up to Scotland, we first moved to Kilsyth because it was sort of equidistant between Glasgow and Edinburgh for my wife's work. So in Kilsyth, we got to know a few people up there, and one of the people we got to know was a girl called Cheryl Healy. And Cheryl was a friend of mine and my wife's, and Cheryl worked for Cumbernauld FM, and she was chatting to my wife about this, and said, I work for the local radio station, and we're looking for DJs. And my wife said, that is exactly what my husband wants to do.
Get him out of the house.
He's always wanted to do, and always have wanted to do a DJ thing, not actually spinning discs in a club, but actually doing a broadcast. So they invited me along, and they gave me a wee chance to do it, and it was great. And that was 2017. I've been doing it once a week ever since. So I'm 200 and I think it's episode number 240 this week coming up. So it's good fun. And
excellent. So and who does the wee child voice? Is that any members of your family, or that this?
That's my youngest daughter. That's wee Ellen, and she
the star of the show. I hope you don't mind me telling you.
She is absolutely brilliant at this stuff. She comes in when I'm, because I tend to pre-record it these days, and send it to the station, and she'll come in and she'll listen to the show with me and play the drums behind me, and while I'm tweeting and stuff, she'll be involved. She loves it.
So I have to. I always try and give you and again I find it quite difficult. I don't know, you're the guy asking. I find it quite difficult to keep track of the songs I've suggested. Not where I keep hoping I don't send in repeats, so to speak. But I keep trying to send you like wee album tracks rather than just your standard known ones.
I only placed. I make it really clear early on. I fell out with a couple of people actually. Some people in my own family, they were like, "Play so and so," and I'm like, "No, I don't like that." What do you mean you like it? I've asked you to play it. I don't care. This is my radio.
It's a request show.
Like it. Get your own radio show. This is mine. I'll only play what I like. So I'll only ever play tunes and bands that I think are good. If I think they're shite, it's not getting played. If I don't like the artist or I think the singer is a walloper, I'm not playing them. As simple as that. I'll only ever play what I think is good music. Right,
because I have to apologise for backtracking here, but I did forget when I mentioned earlier on I still had a kind of grumble and a gripe. My gripe was the book launch last November because it was on my birthday. the plan because my daughter says to me, "Where do you want to go for your birthday?" And I went, "I've got a cracking idea. November the 5th, I've got a cracking idea. Why don't we go into that?" Because I work along this for the Admiral and all, and my daughter works from the corner, so we thought that would be ideal. The whole thing, we'll all go. And then sure enough, I get pulled away into some other nonsense family. All the family want to see. I don't want to see the family. I was looking forward to go to this downstairs in the Admiral with the Scottish pop glitterati. That's what I've written here.
It was absolutely brilliant. It was one of the best nights. It was so surreal. Everything about it was weird, and I got a wee bit nervous before it actually when it was. I've never done anything like this before. This was the very, very first one. I was like, I don't know how many people are going to turn up. We knew we sold 100 tickets or 120 tickets or whatever it was. We'd sold them, and it was like, geez, but I wonder if people are actually going to turn up. And then they kept coming and they kept coming. The place was mobbed, and the bands that came in with a great band, one of Scotland's best funk, if not Scotland's number one funk band, James Brown and Zanny, and they come on and they just put on an incredible show. And we had Bobby at the Bluebells on spinning discs. He was DJing as well, and they come on stage with myself and Big Graham Skinner at Hipswell. Yeah. And we did Let's Go Round Again, the Average White Band song at the end, and it just went on forever, and it was brilliant. It was a fantastic night.
I was so looking forward to kind of telling Graham Skinner how I went to see Hipsway 3 times in the 1 year, just before, God bless the old ABC. That was the last place I saw them in. It still breaks my heart that place get burnt down with that.
It was one of the best venues. It was a fantastic.
It was great.
Venue. But we also missed a couple of really good other writers. David Ross, nearly stole the show himself with reading from one of his books with Stephen Watt, the football poet. Stephen Watt's he's a poet in residence at Dumbarton Football Club, and he's a funny guy. He's just a natural, great poet. And Julie Rea, who's probably one of Scotland's best unknown writers. When she brings her first novel out, you'll know all about it. She's an incredible writer. You could have heard a pin drop when she was talking. So it would be ungallant of me not to mention those guys as well as the bands, because they did contribute to an unforgettable night.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it still irks me. It still annoys me that I never will. Hopefully I can get to the next one. That's all.
There will be another one. There's a few places talking about having nights for this book as well. Waterstones are in talks with Stephen, the publisher, about having nights, and there's a few in the pipeline, so you'll get your chance.
That's fine. This is if this is as good as it gets for me, that's I'm quite happy. But I also meant to ask, what's the most pleasant stroke surprise reaction you've had to the book so far? Anything that sticks out? Like somebody you never expected, or somebody suddenly saying, you know what I mean? And again, how does it feel to walk into Little Watersons and see your book there? Do you still get a wee smile rising, or do you actively seek it out? Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know.
I'm going to move another shy now. Wait, put my book up there. I'm signing other people's books.
I was going to say, have you started putting your book, like people used to do with the national paper, you started putting that on top of
I get this rich, I do, everywhere I go, mate, honestly. No, it's, probably the nice thing was when I first, it was a bookshop in Edinburgh called Golden Hair Books. We went through to Edinburgh. We've done a wee tour of independent bookshops in Scotland, and the vast majority of them have been very receptive and really excited about the book. And Golden Hair in Edinburgh were great, and they put it right on their table, their big table, right away, right in between people like Ian Rankin and Denise Mina and other great Scottish writers. And then I think it was Stephen later on tweeted it or Instagrammed it, the picture of me beside these other writers' books. And that night, they all started messaging, saying, lovely to be sharing a table with you and stuff like that. So that felt really special, getting wee nods from people like Ian Rankin and Christopher Brookmeyer. That was a lovely touch. They didn't have to, but it was very supportive and greatly appreciated. Yeah,
that's nice. A nice wee feeling of actually arrived now. Don't worry about second album pressure or anything.
Oh no, there's a lot riding on this next one.
Exactly, that's it. Right, so I think that's us covered the book. So again, congratulations. It's a fantastic job, and I'm really looking forward to the Glasgow Gothic horror. And again, I don't know if you follow James Dolman on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, he put up a thing the other day, and it was he must have been walking around the city centre or the West End style, and he put up Glasgow City of Spires, and it was the kind of shadow, the sunset of Spires, and I'd kind of said to him, no, it's Glasgow City apostrophe Spires, as in Aspires.
Yeah.
Right, so I look forward to seeing that as your book cover. No doubt it will be something along those lines.
It actually will be. That's the kind of vibe we're going for. But I'll have to write it first.
With a wee dead chalk figure, a chalk figure or somebody dying at the bottom. That's my deal. Right, so we've covered the book, we've covered the music, we've covered the DJing. Let's go on to the important stuff. The football supporting, Celtic. What's your first Celtic related memory?
My uncle Des was my mum's brother was. He was a Celtic fanatic. My dad was a Rangers supporter, right? My dad was he was a current bun. God rest him. But he was a football fan. It wasn't as mad about it as other members of the family, but my mum's brother Desi was very fond of Big Des, and everybody loved the guy. He was a great guy, and he used to, he'd be reading me bedtime stories instead of reading about like Paddock and Bear and shit like that. It would be about the wee green man, Jimmy Johnson, and Harry, and Skipton up Harry. That's what the songs that I was getting sung to at night. My lullabies were, Skip to Carry and the Wee Green Man and Celtic, that's a team for me. So that was, I think when my dad and my uncles were trying to get me into Rangers when I was about 7. But by that point I was like, there's no way, Celtic's my team. You can't do 100% Celtic man ever since.
Yeah, fine. That's when I started. My two pals worked in London. And they were walking, they had to walk home one night for the dancing. You'd done all their money and having to walk home, and they were walking through, Brixton. And it was basically whatever it's either Dart Street or a tunnel or an underpass. There's a bunch of guys at the end, and they starts walking, and my pal said to one another one, we'll go basically let's take the long way round. And the other guy, Pat, went, that'll be right. Pat starts singing the Harry Hood song. And rang me alright, and next time you go to the end, the guys went, you're alright, Jock, on you go. And just let him go. Because it was one of the best guys singing the Harry Hood song at 3 in the morning in Brixton. Right, so your first Celtic game, was that at Celtic Park or maybe Hampden or somewhere else?
Des took me, I was out on my 6th birthday, went to see Celtic play Dundee, 1973, it would have been the tail end of the Lions. Took me to see it, it was like, wow. Just everything about it was not what I expected. The noise in the bus up London Road, and we were in the downstairs part of the bus. So we went to McSorley's first. I'd wait outside McSorley's.
Was this on a supporters bus?
No. This is
just the normal corporate.
Up the London Road, but we go to McSorley. Half the bus for Priest Hill to the town. Dropped you off in Midland Street, right beside McSorley's. He jumped into McSorley's, bring me out a wee can of Coke or a bottle of Coke and a bag of crisps. Stood there with all the other wains eating their crisps as their uncles were having a bevy. And then on the bus for Argyll Street up London Road, and that was where the real excitement kicked in, because the noise started. And it was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, because we would be on the bottom level of the bus, upstairs everybody's.
Aye. And the old steamy windows style, remember the condensation on the buses?
Incredibly exciting. And I remember getting off the bus, and it was sort of January 73, got off the bus, and there it was in front of Celtic Park, the people. And it was, everybody was an adult, it felt like, so it was just, I remember bodies and bodies. Never seen this amount of people in my life. Lifted me out of the turnstile, and we went, and it was there. And the first thing I noticed, I couldn't hear the commentator. There was no commentator. Like, I'm expecting him to talk during the game, and tell us what's happening. There was nothing. It was just the crowd. So that was the first thing I noticed. And the second thing I noticed was the colour, because we had a black and white telly. And then you say, I've seen pictures of Celtic, but seeing everything in full glorious Technicolor, mind blowing.
So did you get a dentine chewing gum and a spearmint macaroon bar at the time, or
macaroon bars,
a bag of chips on the way home?
And a wee
the Cura, remember the Cura, the juice, remember that? So what's your favourite Celtic game then? Or your lifetime supporting Celtic, what's your favourite personal Celtic game?
The one that I celebrated most was probably Barcelona 2012. I come up for London for that. I flew up for London for that.
You never get the train?
No, I up and fly back down again. It was one of their jobs, and I flew up, and I had a meeting with a producer at the BBC about my writing, and he kindly gave me a bit of time in the afternoon, and he read a wee bit, and he was very, very complimentary. So I was bouncing out of this thing at the BBC, went into town, met my mates, had a couple of bites to eat, up in a game, not expecting for a second we're going to win this game, right? But we were right behind the goal where Wanyama scored the header.
Right, yep, I know.
And fucking chaos. It's the wildest celebrations I've ever experienced. I've been going to Celtic Park regularly. I was a regular for years. That was the wildest celebration I'd ever seen, and it was only topped by Tony Watt's winner an hour later when Watt broke and he scored that goal. I must have ended up about 4 or 5 rows from where I started. It was bodies and chaos. And that night I went back to my mum's and I watched the highlights and fucking on a tablet, and I watched as much as I possibly could. Didn't get to sleep about 4 in the morning. It was just one of the perfect days.
Yeah. And what have you? Do you think there's a great football novel out there? I think there's a great football book, Fever Pitch. I'm trying to think of it. Any that spring to mind?
David Ross's Danny Garvey. That's a really, really good book. But and it's for me my favourite book of his. But the book, one of the things that got me into fiction again, I stopped reading fiction for years. One of the things that got me into it was David Peace, the guy who wrote The Damned United.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great book in itself, you know. But he wrote a book after that about Bill Shankly called Red or Dead, and it's outstanding. It's a game changer for me. It really did get me back into fiction. And it's written in a very distinct rhythm about Shankly, and it sounds like Shankly. So once you tune into the rhythms of this book, you've got it, and you've got Shankly. It's brilliant. I'd highly recommend it. That's probably my favourite football book, Red or Dead.
Yeah, I mean, the one like that, Damn United, is a great book, but the one thing I do remember the most about it is even just the opening few pages where it's Brian Clough ending his football career. And that, I mean, it's a brilliant, it's a beautiful tragic image, kind of, if you know what I mean, but basically this is his life's going to be. That's amazing. Right, so the weirdest place you've ever watched, I'll allow you listening, because mine is kind of listening, but what's your weirdest place you've kind of tuned into a Celtic game?
Oh, I'll tell you the worst experience of tuning in to a Celtic game was the Cup final 1990.
Rovers? No,
Aberdeen. Cup final 1990 against Aberdeen.
Penalties?
Went to penalties. I watched penalties on CFAX. Didn't have it on the telly because obviously Man United were playing Palace that day and they weren't showing Scottish football down south. So when our game continued, the English didn't take the feed, and the only way you could watch it was on CFAX. So I watched the penalty shootout unfold on fucking CFAX.
Waiting for the wee numbers to spin, man. Come on.
Ended up 9-8 to Aberdeen.
Aye.
Like, oh.
I remember I crashed. I was driving a van at the time, and me and my cousin, he was in an XR2, a Fiesta XR2. We came here he was in Newton Mearns, I stayed up in Denison, but we came here the Capkin Base to avoid Hampden. And we were coming down the Capkin Base, he was in his wee XR2, I'm in this transit van. He's looking at the traffic in East Kilbride Road. He goes to go. I'm looking at the traffic. I goes to go, no realising he hasn't went. So basically my van just went, almost right through him at the back end, but thankfully we weren't going that fast. But that's my memory of that. They then back to Denison to watch us getting beat. So that was a bit of a gutter. Your favourite Celtic player of all time, who would it be? Have you got one? You don't need to have one, it's just if you do. I don't know if I'd actually have one, but I've got a favourite Celtic goal, which will come in a second.
I've got a few on my arm, right? Henrik Larsson's on my arm, right?
That's the Australian Henrik Larsson for anybody listening. He's got his arm upside down.
Because I've got Bill and Neil Hodden, the European Cup.
That's a nice one. That's a nice touch.
And Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, hold on, we can't really see that too well. Oh, I see it, it's I'm dribbling, I see it now.
Aye, so...
The Holy Trinity, we'll call that the Holy Trinity.
Aye, but if I had to pick one, probably Larsson, because his impact at a time when you never thought you would get heroes again. I never thought I'd get heroes like I had when I was younger, like the Lions and Bobby Lennox. I love Bobby Lennox and Bertie Auld. I just love these guys to bits. And then you sort of go through the phase where it's McStay and Charlie Nicholas. I love Charlie. And Nicholas ends up disappointing you and you're like, oh, bastard. And you never think, well, I'll probably never be able to attach myself to a Celtic player again like I did when I was younger. Maybe that's just part of growing up and you'll never be able to have that feeling again. And then Henrik Larsson arrived. And that's a game changer for me because the guy gave us 7 years. The 7 best years of his career he gave us, and I fucking love him. I met him a few times and he was brilliant. He couldn't have been nicer, he couldn't have signed enough stuff, and he couldn't have been more of the hero that you wanted. And a wee postscript to that is I went to Paris, and another one of my Paris trips in 2006. Barcelona got to Arsenal. My friend got tickets for it, corporate section, and said, "You want to go to the European Cup?" I said, "Let's do it, man. Let's go." Because we've done a few before. We went World Cup, and we're in Paris the night the French won the World Cup, which is one of the most incredible nights of my life. And I didn't go to one of the other European Cup games that he got tickets for a few years before, and I was like, if it happens again, definitely going. So I got tickets, and it turned out it was Barcelona against Arsenal. So I went there in my Celtic top and in a corporate section before the game. Larsson's warming up maybe about 20 feet away from me. So I'm 10 rows for the front, and he's like another 10, 15 feet ahead. And I'm screaming, Henrik! Henrik! Nothing. Didn't even turn round, nothing at all. No worries. Half time, he's out warming up again. Henrik! Standing in the chairs, Celtic top, like, Henrik! Nothing. Obviously comes on as a sub, turns the match, right? It sets up 2 goals. Barca win the cup. Place has gone absolutely fucking tonto. Arsenal fans they've bailed, but Barca fans, every Barca fan saw me with the Celtic tops like that. Celtic, yes! Arsenal fans are going, why are you wearing a Celtic top? You're not getting this, are you?
Yeah.
So after the game, they get the trophy and they walk round to the Barca fans over here and they're celebrating with the Barca fans. Larsson peels off for the Barca team, walks right up to our section, points right at me, and goes like that. And I was like, Henrik! So he had heard me and he had seen me, but he just wasn't reacting till after it. And all my mates are going, that's you! I'm like, I fucking know!
Oh, result. I thought you were going to the old Frank Sinatra. Fuck off, Frank, I'm with my bird. Oh, nice. So your favourite Celtic goal, would that be the Tony Watt one, or is there another one that's kind of special to you?
Oof. That is a tricky one. Favourite Celtic goal. That would have to be Larsson's chip.
Oh, aye, well, it's funny, I've written here, I've written here brackets, Henrik's lob, but purely because I've got a wee stub. That's not my favourite, I can tell you mine in a minute, but, so Larsson's chip, were you there that day?
No, I wasn't, I was in the ticket office at Camden, and I couldn't get the day off, so I couldn't even watch it on the telly. So Lisa, my wife, she was in the house, and we just no longer had mobile phones, so we had these big brick mobile phones. And she said, I'll call you if anything happens, because I wasn't even on the fucking radio down south. So I'm in the ticket office at Camden, before I became supervisor, doing my selling tickets on Sunday afternoon. And if my phone goes, and I thought it was her just saying, that's it started now. And she was like, it's 1-0. Oh, yes, magic. I put the phone down. A couple of minutes later, it's like, 2-0! Like, shots! Dancer! Phone goes again. Like, 3-0! At 3-0, I had to say to my boss, Jerry Doyle.
My wife's drunk, I have to go.
I was like, fucking, I can't concentrate, mate. My teammate, Kelly's going to cash up for me. I'm fucking gone, I'm away home. And he went, don't worry about it, just go. So by the time I got back I was living in Finchley at the time. So Camden to Finchley's 10 minutes away. By the time I get to Finchley, Rangers have got to go back, it's 3-1. Bastard, right? Jump off a train, in the house. I'm in the house seconds when Sutton chests the ball into Larson's path. I've not taken my jacket off or anything like that. In the house is Larson, the ball hits over the top. Mind blown. And that's because of the significance of that game. That's the game that probably broke. It started, they still won titles after it, but that's the one that changed the balance.
Aye, that was...
The balance back to Celtic. And it made us the top dogs that season and subsequently. So I've always had that one. Every time I see the goal, I'm thinking, how does he do that? It's a work art. It's like, that should be in the fucking move, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's your heart's still in your mouth every time. Like the dink, just before the dink, you're like, oh.
But it's as well. He nutmegs on a Dutch international, runs across him and he nutmegs him. And then he's like, keeper's coming out. He's like, oh, there it goes. See you. I'm sending him a wrong way with a lob, with a chip.
Aye, but it's just, like, one of my favourite sights in foot, especially the Celtic part, is whenever you see the ball boy jumping up. No, that wee guy. He's just doing the moon, that's what. Well, like, my memory of that goal is it was Sunday afternoon, and my mum she'd had a few strokes, and she just had a wee TIA, so I had to go to Cathcart, pick her up to come out to us for the Sunday afternoon kind of thing. So I get to a wee bit longer than the usual expect, driving up to, I was staying down at the back of Rutherglen at the time, gets her into the house, settled, turns on the TV, literally this, did you say, it's almost like the same time, punt up the park, chest down, here we go, and I just went, yeah, and as I've turned around to look, there's my mum fast asleep on the couch, so I couldn't even scream her in that way, because I'm like, and everybody else is out in the house, and it's just that way you're sitting in that private, perfect hell in that way of...
We played Rangers at Ibrox a few years ago. It was probably late 2008, and my boy was a couple of months old. So we're watching the game, and Lisa get Michael to sleep in her arms, right? And she was like, fucking don't react, don't shout if there's a goal or a chance. Just keep it cool, keep it calm. And the ball came to Scott McDonald. He did this turn and he whacked one right into the top corner. And I just ran out the living room to shout. But Lisa didn't. She still got a baby and she was like, yes! And the rain jumped. So it wasn't me that time. It was her. And I was out the room.
And Michael's had a hearing aid ever since, but he said it was worth it.
He did a few times. I remember when Samaras scored that last minute goal against Spartak Moscow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was sitting on the couch drinking his milk, and it was one of those time games that was finishing at 7:30, so he's ready to go to his bed. And the ball comes across and Samaras bangs it in, and both Lisa and I are like, yes! And Michael burst into tears. He was only about 4 or 5 at the time, but he couldn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
My father just jumped up and started like, ah! There was no reason for it.
No, it's a joy, isn't it? So, right, okay, so my final question is, this season, are you totally shocked? Pleasantly, of course. Are you totally shocked, or were you optimistic at the start of this?
Not optimistic at all. I thought we'd been left an absolute shit show. How we've been mismanaged over the last couple of years. I thought we'd from the position where Rodgers had us in 2018-19, hiring Neil Lennon to steady the ship was one thing, but giving him a job full time and letting him run it through there it's proven to be quite disastrous. And we had a lot of players who weren't playing to their potential. Players that I thought were really top class for Celtic, and they just down tools. And last season, this behind closed door season was utterly depressing, because I remember how it felt to fail to win 10 in a row the first time. Doing it again was bitter. I felt awful, and I lost a lot of respect for Neil Lennon for him hanging in there and claiming that it wasn't his fault. It wasn't all his fault. The players down tools, but it was a collective responsibility that nobody seemed to want to take. So I was absolutely devastated. I thought Eddie Howe will come in. He'll be a professional manager. If we can get our shit together, we can sort of maybe ride the wave a wee bit with a new manager and get a couple of good players in, and fingers crossed, we'll be there or thereabouts. If we can take it to get into the split and we're still, in the hunt within a couple of points, I'd have been happy with that. Where we are at the moment, it's been from those early days with Postecoglou. I was concerned he was going to be another Tony Mowbray. I thought he might be another guy lacking in any sort of pragmatism. He was a complete theorist, and this is my way and I'm sticking to it, and I'm not going to change it. That wouldn't have worked for me, and it wouldn't have worked for Celtic. But he's come in and he's stuck to his guns as much as he could, but when there's been a chance to tweak it, he has tweaked it, and it's worked generally. So I'm made up with how the new players have responded. The style of play is probably, when we get it right, it's as exciting as anything I've ever seen at Celtic. It's that good. It's a delight to watch some of the football that we play. We're not there yet. We're not over the line, and Europe's going to be a big test next season. But I'm very, very happy the way things have went this season, and I wouldn't have put a penny on it before the season.
Yeah, as you say, especially that start. But I remember like we'd done a few podcasts at the start, and Hector and I were very cynical. Not to do with Ange personally, but just as you mentioned, the whole mismanagement of the club. So you didn't have the whole waiting on Eddie Howe. That classic caveat of no one's bigger than the club. So why are we actually waiting on some? No, that idea. And then it doesn't happen. But then I remember being on a podcast and saying, it was like, so how do you think this will go? And I said, well, the thing that this new manager really needs is for this guy Kyogo to hit the ground running. And then it was a case of 3 or 4 months later, one thing Ange needs now with Kyogo is for this new guy Maeda to hit the ground running. And the impact on him, and subsequently Hatate just walked in and went, just give me it, I'll take care of this for the first couple of games. And it's just unbelievable the impact the guys have had.
That's the thing. See the recruitment this time. We got Carter Vickers and Jota in on the last day of the transfer window, right? Somebody else who got 3 players in. But
no Giacomakis.
Yeah, it might have been the 3 of them we got in the last day of the transfer window. But that's how Celtic normally do business, is like arse end. We do it It never helps, because by that point we're either out of Europe or we're trailing or something bad's fucking happened. We have to play near beat on at centre half for 6 weeks. That doesn't work for me. So Postecoglou must have said something. By the way, January comes, I want the players in right away. I want them ready. And had he not done that, we probably wouldn't have beaten Rangers at the start of February, because they had 3 weeks to work with the team and the club to get ready for that game. Hatate was like unplayable for a couple of weeks until he just ran out of gas.
Well, that's also, but he also, like, I always talk about the adrenaline crash, the worry about, like, say we have a big result in Europe, I know we've not had a bit, that way so your adrenaline's pure pumped, so as soon as that kind of chemical imbalance comes, you're really struggling come the weekend. Yep. And again, Hatate had that kind of immediate start after such a hard season. He was one of the players of the season in Japan, but he just had enough, there was enough adrenaline burst for that Hearts game and the Rangers game. and then you could afford, so as you say, getting them in that early, rather than bringing them into bed in. You know what I mean?
Difference. So getting those players like O'Reilly, Maida, Gucci, we've not seen much of Gucci, but getting those guys in, Maida, Hatate, O'Reilly, and getting them in early enough that they're going to make a difference by the time play starts again, has probably won us the league. It's probably going to win us the league. Just that wee tweak at the right time.
Imagine after all these years the phrase "speculate to accumulate" coming true. Who knew? How many times? If you'd a pound for every time a Celtic fan had quoted that, we might be quite rich by now.
Your website was one of the go-to places for years. It was when you knew an E-Tim's rumour mill had.
Nah, what's Hector? God bless him.
Honestly, that was exciting. That was like, being back in the 70s and a new pump was just dropped. That's what that felt like to us, for fans of Celtic in the nascent internet days, when the E-Tim's rumour mill came out on a Friday morning. You were like, you knew 90% of the stuff was shite and it's not going to.
No, that's harsh. Harsh. 99 at least.
It didn't matter because it gave you that. In my opinion, that's one of the reasons I don't read newspapers anymore. I don't read the newspapers. We used to always get our sport news from the Record and the Times and the Sun and the Mirror and whatever, right? The advent of the internet has killed the importance of people like Keevans and what's his name, Bill Leckie.
Exactly. Anyone really?
Because before the internet, whatever they said went, because they were the guys in the know. The internet is now proven they knew fuck all. They knew them, right? And you guys and people on the internet who may have a contact or may have a different way of looking at it is what I want to hear and I want to see. I don't want to hear, about this succulent lamb journalism shit. I don't want to hear it. I read it for 40 odd years of my life. Don't need to read it anymore. I want to read more of what my peers and my colleagues and my friends think, because it's more valid, because you guys invest in it as much as I do.
Exactly, and the thing, but it's also as you say, like, you realise they're starting to use the caveat, especially your Hugh Keevans of the world. It's just, I'm just giving an opinion. Like, again, Ange, absolutely not good enough. Now he goes, but maybe that helps spur him on. So, I mean, it's that kind of liars. The whole deviant sidestep. Yeah, I said that at the time, but look at the, and you kind of go, no, your best is ignored.
Intention to G him up.
Again, you're kind of going, your pension pot's obviously struggling, that you need to resort to these sort of things. But that's by the by. But it's also a good way to kind of bring it full circle. It's interesting that while, like, newspaper, I don't want to say journalism, because we're stretching the boundaries of journalism, saying that is really crumbling, and people don't have any respect for it, especially, say, Scottish sports media. But like, kind of the written word, books, etc., they're still standing fast. Everybody's still like wanting that culture fix. You know what I mean? The quality fix. So that's really good. So I'll wrap up there, because I think I've kept you for an hour and 45 minutes at least, including a pee break, so you're doing no bad. And all that's left for me is to say, George Paterson, author of The Girl, The Crow, The Writer, The Fighter, presenter of Lost in Music. So remember, folk, any good musical requests, he didn't allow shite or swearing. no shite, no swearing. Please get them into George on a Wednesday via Twitter. George, what's your Twitter handle? G Paterson?
GF Paterson.
There you go. So look up George on Twitter. Always worth following. And then get your suggestions in. And again, we'll look out for your second book. So thanks very much, George, and it's a big thank you from me, Tim. All right, mate. Thank you.